Mary, the founder of A25, an AI training and implementation agency. It's been a while since I've done a video. I moved, as you can tell. I have a brand new office here that I'm recording from, and I know I owe all of you another video on AI. So I thought today that we would talk about the deep research functionality that a lot of the large language models have released recently, because there's so many amazing use cases for deep research. And I did share on LinkedIn one of my experiments, which was creating an SEO audit, and it proved to be very popular. So I thought I would walk you through step by step how I created this SEO audit and how I ran it through a couple of the different LLMs and what kind of results we got. All right, let's get going. Okay, so first off, let's take a look at the prompt I created for the deep research report. And this is fairly extensive, but we'll go through each of the items one at a time. At the beginning, I'm giving it a little bit of context and telling it what I'm looking for. This is the section here where you add the URL you'd like the audit for and the location, because you could ask for just the US or global, or if you're based in another country. And then we break down the report into 9 different categories. The first is the keyword optimization and strategy that you want it to help you identify. The second is looking at meta tags and structure. Third is the page speed and the core vitals. Fourth is whether or not it's mobile friendly and accessible. 5 is the content quality and then the structure. So this is clarity and relevance. This is where the messaging will be considered. 6 is the internal linking and site architecture, and this is where a lot of your ranking is influenced. 7 is looking at a couple of competitors, and you do need to specify who your competitors are. And then 8 is thinking about AI search, because obviously we know there's a lot changing with AI and the large language models, so that addresses this. And then finally, number 9 is wrapping it up with some quick wins. Let's look at the outputs. So first up, we have ChatGPT, and I popped in the prompt, and as you can see here, it took 29 minutes for this report, and it drew on 36 sources and did 292 searches. That is the most out of any of the deep research tools I used, and the report you get back is very extensive. I don't know how many pages this is, but you'll see as we go through it, there is a lot of information in here. So now the output, as you can see, it's giving me a quick summary, and then it's breaking it down based on the categories I gave it in the prompt. This very first one, keyword optimization and strategy, it's giving us a summary of the primary keywords. The homepage targets generic terms like visit California, but then it gives you some recommendations. For instance, integrating California attractions, California vacation, and so on. And then it moves down into secondary keywords. I also like this alignment with user intent. It could be for informational, could be to find something they actually want to book. And so it's giving some recommendations on targeting more intent-driven search phrases. And then this is a really nice touch. It looks at the competitor gaps. I asked it to compare Colorado.com and Visit New York, and it's already pulling out how are these two competitors in comparison to Visit California. Next, we get into the meta tag and HTML structure, and I'm going to skim through this because it's pretty technical and dense, but you can see there's a lot of recommendations in here. Another thing that ChatGPT does that I like is actual speed testing, and the other 2 deep research features I tested didn't provide this amount of detail. And so you can see here it's looking at your vital metrics, the core speed, and Visit California doesn't score so well. Looks like they need to work on their speed load, and it gives you some recommendations for that. Then it looks at mobile friendliness and accessibility, and it goes through each of the elements like responsive design, mobile UX patterns. It even goes down into detail like, are your buttons easily tappable when it's at mobile size? Then it reviews content quality and structure. So this is where it looks at each of the pages and tells you whether or not the layout is visually engaging, how useful the copy is. So just an example here, Visit California, it says, it currently welcomes users with a poetic blurb. California is a land of breathtaking beauty and diverse landscapes, which sets the tone but might not provide enough keyword-rich crawlable text. And it gives you a recommendation for how to fix that. And then you can see it's going into more detailed pages. It'll cover things like engagement and conversion, readability, and so on. Then again, a little more technical, the internal linking and site architecture. We'll just skim through that. And this is the part I really like, the competitor comparison. So it breaks down how Visit California compares to both of these competitors. I gave it on a range of different criteria: on-page SEO and content, technical performance, content examples. And then it gives you this really neat little strengths and weaknesses. So you can see what you're doing really well and you're not doing so well and how that compares. Then the AI search visibility, one thing I will say about this section, it's really general and high level. So I think what ChatGPT is doing here is just giving you some really high level best practices for how to improve your AI search visibility. As an example, it knows that FAQs work really well for large language models and AI search, so it's telling you should create an FAQ section. One thing I think was interesting though is it actually compared the difference between ChatGPT and Perplexity, and it's got a little bit of advice for you here. And then it also pulled web traffic from SimilarWeb and shows you the amount of traffic coming from Perplexity. If you're trying to optimize for these AI search tools, this is really helpful information to have. And then down in section 9, I'd asked for opportunities and quick wins, and it has a list of those here, which is really a summary of all of the information it covered in the very extensive report before. Now, how does this compare to Perplexity? And this is a common question that I get. So we're going to have a really quick look at the differences. So this is Perplexity.ai, and I gave it exactly the same prompt. Different layout, as you can see. And up the top here, I like this. There's a summary. This is the actual research report. We can look at the tasks that Perplexity walked through, and you can scroll down and it tells you its thinking. It lists all the sites it visited. There were no images for this deep research, but sometimes there is. And then the sources that it referenced. Back to the research, one thing I'll note right away, this is much, much shorter. It's probably about half the length of the ChatGPT example. And I think part of the reason is that it's not providing quite as much context. You can see as we scroll down and we look at these sections, it's much lighter on the text. I still think some of this information is helpful, and some of the things that I do like in this report that the ChatGPT version didn't provide is there's a couple of tables. So when it's comparing Visit California to a competitor, it gives you this information in a nice and easy way to consume, a table. But one thing, it's missing Colorado.com. I gave it 2 competitors and it's only listing the one. So it missed the mark there. The other thing that I like is it also gives you a ranking of some of the tasks, and it tells you the impact, the effort, and what it recommends as the priority. ChatGPT, on the other hand, it just gave you a list. It didn't really tell you which one of those things would have a higher impact or not, or how you should tackle them. And then finally, Gemini also has a deep research functionality that you can select. And it's similar to ChatGPT and Perplexity, maybe not as in-depth as the ChatGPT report. But one thing I do like when using Gemini is you can export these reports straight into your workspace, which saves you an extra step. And you see it's got a very similar layout. It does use tables, and this table is actually a little bit more detailed than Perplexity, covers slightly different things. And so I think the takeaway here is that if you do have access to all 3 of these tools, you do get different things and different formats. And so it can be worth running the same search for all 3 of these platforms. And then you can pick and choose what you want to apply. All right, well, that's it for this week's video. I hope you found this helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe. We'll see you next time.